Hello and welcome to the new series of Drishti IAS. I am Pooja Dwivedi and today I bring to you the recurring abstention of India at the UN. What is this? Why is India abstaining from voting for or against the resolution which deplores Russian aggression on Ukraine, and why do we need to understand this from a broader perspective? These are the many topics that we are going to cover under this, and from the perspective of GS Means Paper 2 and GS Paper 4. This is very important, so keep in mind. So I will try to be as brief as possible. Students who are preparing for the examination, the option, if you have political science, very important. Try to keep up with me. I will try to be as brief as possible and I will not stretch it very far because that of course will make you lose an interest. So let's talk about what is the news exactly. The permanent representative T.S. Trimurti to the UN has abstained from voting for or against the resolution which was US sponsored, and it deplores Russian invasion in Ukraine. This particular resolution got the support of 141 out of 93 members at the United Nations General Assembly, because before that at the UNSC also India abstained from voting along with China and UAE. The interesting part is at the United Nations General Assembly, UAE voted for the resolution which deplores Russian invasion in Ukraine. Can you tell me in the comment segment how many countries did not vote? That means they abstained from voting for or against the resolution in the comment segment along with India. So the permanent representative did say that Indian life was lost because of the ongoing aggression, ongoing war in Ukraine, and humanitarian assistance to Ukraine is already being sent. But it also said that territorial integrity should be respected and diplomacy should not be abandoned, which is being abandoned right now. Nobody is talking about diplomacy. Nobody is talking about calming things down by talking. Everybody is assisting one or the other country by giving them supply of arms. So this is the entire issue. Let's move on and talk about why is India having this stance of not at all voting for or against at the UNSC. This has its roots back in the 1948. We all know the crisis India went through with respect to Pakistan's aggression in Kashmir. So when in 1948, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, the then Prime Minister of India, brought the issue to notice at the United Nations, what happened? India's concerns were not addressed. Overlooking India's concern, they accepted the concerns, the counter concerns or counter response of Pakistan about having a United Nations Commission for India and Pakistan and resolve the issue in Kashmir. So whatever was the bilateral issue with respect to Kashmir became an international issue. That is first. And this is something that India will never ever forget, because that is still going on, right? And we are already paying such a huge price for bringing this issue to the UN, where Britain did it. Britain did talk about having the counter response of Pakistan to be admitted. Then Chapter 6 of the United Charter, which talks about having a proper roadmap for diplomatic talks for any dispute, it's being abandoned, and that is the problem. The draft resolution at the United Nations Security Council, not the General Assembly, it's the similar thing. Similar thing with respect to resolution, it deplores Russian aggression. So United Nations Security Council, there the draft resolution did not address the issue at all with respect to diplomacy. This is unprecedented already. The thing is that it has been mentioned in the Minsk Agreement of 2015. So that is something India is not having a stomach for. India wants diplomacy. India is already going through such a huge pressure. Just imagine, so many big countries have stood against Russian aggression, but still India is abstaining. India is not coming under any sort of Western pressure, which is a big deal because India is a sovereign country. India can make its own policies. India will do what is in India's interest. Then Russia is a time-tested friend, that is for sure. We have had an experience where the West was, even if they were not in support, they were straight out against India at many instances. when whereas Russia has been a traditional friend of India. Now, see, if we talk about the past invasions or past aggressions of Russia, the Hungarian Revolution in 1956 and Czechoslovakia's Prague Spring in 1968. There also, India abstained for voting. India did not give out any sort of message which was seen against Russia. Now, in a very important book of Jairam Ramesh, he mentions that V.K. Menon, he ignored the then Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru's advice that V.K. Menon should not give out any sort of message that supports USSR's or Soviet's aggression. But he did not do that. He did not at all do that, and that was answered by Russia by making so many vetoes in favor of India. So that is something we must all look at. So the USSR also invaded Afghanistan in 1979, December 1979. But here what happened? That India abstained from voting, and it was being seen as like India is endorsing USSR's invasion in Afghanistan. So what did India tell to UN? It told to the UN that the communist regime of Afghanistan invited USSR to come and help with the regime in Afghanistan that was there. So as you see, this is not something new that India is doing. India is abstaining. India has done it. India has done it for very many reasons. I will talk about that as well. Now, India abstained during 2014 Crimea invasion too. Now in Crimea, the President Putin, he wanted to safeguard the rights of Russian origin people in Crimea from Ukraine. So in a disputed plebiscite, Crimea belonged to Russia now. And now the Donbas region, Luhansk and Donetsk, they also, after a short period of time, after the annexation of Crimea, they had a plebiscite in which they wanted independence from Kiev, that is Ukraine. So here also India abstained. India also has security interests with respect to getting our defense supplies. Although India is doing the Atmanirbhar Bharat in the defense segment, that is the need of the hour. Because right now, India is very much dependent on Russia for its defense equipment, 65% of it. And India is already locking horns with China at the LAC. India is a sovereign country. First of all, India's policy does not change under any sort of pressure. India is a free country. India has led the non-aligned movement since the past. So, well, if I do not take part into any sort of blame game, if any resolution comes, I abstain. That means I'm sending a message that this is a bilateral issue. It can be solved through diplomacy. Territorial integrity should be respected, and talks are being abandoned, which is not in the interest of anybody. Right now, India is paying the price with inflation, and we see that it's not good for anybody. The instability of US and the UNSC support for India. India did not find any support by the US in the 1971 Bangladesh Liberation War, and thereafter India had to look towards Russia, USSR, UK and France for collaboration for the liberation war of Bangladesh, when the UNSC said that please, Pakistan and India both take out troops of the respective countries from each other's region, and a UN commission will be set up to explore that if there is any chance of resolving the dispute. Here also USSR came into the picture and said that this will be done. The arms and de-weaponization or demilitarization will only happen when there is a political solution to this. So here also US came to India's support. Now, how many times Russia has used its veto power? Russia's veto power. Veto power, what is veto power? That means it is provided to the permanent 5 members of the United Nations Security Council. If one of the member votes against or does not favor the resolution, it gets blocked. USSR or Russia has done it. The USSR's first veto power in favor of India was in 1957 over the Kashmir issue, when the then leader of USSR, Nikita Khrushchev, he said in 1955 on his visit to India, he said, this is 5, okay, that if India ever faces any sort of issues with respect to Kashmir, then Russia is just a border away. It's just crossed the border. And it stayed true to its word. It did not let Kashmir become a global concern. It vetoed in favor of India so that it could be a bilateral issue to solve between Pakistan and India. Then Pakistan, back then, because Pakistan proposed that we should have a temporary UN force for demilitarization of that area. But as you see, if UN could have come into the picture, that would have been a global concern. Russia helped us. In 1961, when Goa was still under the rule of Portuguese, Portugal sent a letter to the United Nations Security Council concerning Goa that India should withdraw its troops from Goa. And that was supported. This resolution was supported by US, France and UK. Here also, USSR came to India's support when Russia, this is Russia but it's actually USSR then, said to India to do away with outposts of colonialism in its territory were absolutely lawful and justified. This is a telegram that was sent by Nikita Khrushchev to Jawaharlal Nehru. See, this was the level, this has been the level of Russia's relationship with India. When US and UK, France, they were never in support of India, USSR has been India's friend since that time. Portugal tried to invoke the UN Charter. Here, see, as I told you, and USSR used its 99th veto in favor of India. And then, of course, India gained Goa when it got liberated on 19 December 1961, right? So, this is another one. The USSR used its 100th veto again in favor of India. When an Irish resolution was sent to the UNSC saying that please Pakistan and India sit together and talk about it and let's make this a global concern. USSR came to India's help, made sure that the Kashmir issue remained bilateral and not global. Okay, so the USSR has used its veto power thrice to ensure that the Kashmir issue remains a bilateral issue and not become a global concern. India has had, see, foreign policies are not ever made on moral grounds or humanitarian grounds. Humanitarian grounds, actually, if you think about it from a realistic perspective, is never the issue. It is always the issue of integrity and sovereignty. If any country has its sovereignty threatened, then it will become aggressive, that is for sure. And that aggression can be calmed down by diplomacy, by addressing the actual concerns and not invading and war. So this is something that we have to talk about. First, diplomatic ties. India has a big diplomatic tie, as I told you. Big chunk of diplomatic tie India has knotted with Russia. With respect to BRICS, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, Indian Ocean Rim Association, dialogue partner, Russia has become a dialogue partner because of India's insistence, India's support. Then at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization sideline, Russia became a mediator, not like solving the issue, but yes, making India and China talk about LAC. Then recent cooperation in defense, as I told you, India depends for its defense manufacturers 65% whopping. And we have S-400 Triumph as well. The deal has been done. And let's see, sanctions are not going to actually be imposed on India because India is very important to US as well with respect to China. So that is something we need to think about. Then AK assault rifles are also being manufactured by Russia for India. And a 10-year speculation for a 10-year defense pact is also there. Then economic domain, although not very impressive because it's just about $10 billion. For US and China with India, it's much more than that, much bigger than this. Next, we have to see India-Russia Annual Summit, which is an institutionalized dialogue mechanism. We also have the 2+2 dialogue mechanism, which India has with Japan, Australia and the US. where the foreign minister and external minister, they both meet, and because of the meeting, any sort of bilateral issue which is with respect to international relation can be solved. Now this I already talked about. So you see, India is very important in the world map right now with respect to Russia. But India cannot just vote for or against, because we have to make it a bilateral issue. We cannot make it a global concern like it has become. Now, India is a natural leader of Quad in the Indo-Pacific region. This has been said by Australia. Today, the virtual meeting of Quad is also happening. Quad is being touted as Asian Nato by China, and that will be the concern of Russia as well, because US is a part of it, Australia is a part of it, Japan is a part of it. These three countries are actually deploring. They have outrightly, straight out, without any veil, they have deplored Russia's invasion. How will India balance it? That is the first point. It is not an Asian NATO. Why? Because this is an informal grouping. This is not a military association. This is an informal grouping. NATO is a formalized, proper agreement is there with respect to military organization structure of NATO. It's not that, but it is still being touted as that. First challenge is that. Now, implications, as I told you, Quad. Although India is a natural leader, India needs like-minded countries to come together in the Indo-Pacific region against territorial aggressors like China. But if it will be touted as Asian NATO, it will be very difficult for India to balance it. But as I told you, it is an informal grouping. It is not formal in nature. It does not have any sort of treaty. Russia, China, Pakistan nexus. First thing, if we corner a country to that extent that it will join hands with certain countries which are the enemy of the enemy, right? So they will come together. That is what will happen. And it will be very difficult for India to manage Russian relation with vis-a-vis the other countries. Then we have sanctions. Sanctions already imposed on Russia will prove disastrous to the entire globe. But to India, it will be a problem with respect to defense manufacturing. And also the invasion is already taking a toll on the economy. The fuel prices have risen, the gas prices will rise, edible oil prices will rise. The economy will also have to suffer the losses after COVID-19 pandemic. Let's move on and talk about the conclusion. Biggest conclusion we can take, please have diplomacy as the first and the last resort. Anywhere, conflict has not proven anyone's point. It has taken a toll on lives of the people. It has taken a toll on the economy. It has taken a toll on the entire globe, somehow or the other. So India has remained very firm in its stand with respect to diplomacy, and we shall continue to do that. Now let's look at the question for our mains answer writing practice. Discuss how the recent abstention by India in the UNGA, United Nations General Assembly, is a part of a traditional policy that India has followed with respect to Russia. What are the challenges that India might face ahead with regard to it in 250 words? So that's it for today. Tomorrow we shall meet again with another segment. Until then, stay updated, and thank you so much for watching.